Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol character spotlight. And today we are taking a look at Mr. Doctor Voodoo here, Jericho Drum himself. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get right into things. But real quick before we do that, I do just want to make a quick kind of channel update thing here. We are going to be moving this series to Tuesdays going forward. It's always been on Wednesdays, but the reason why I'm moving it to Tuesdays is because we're going to go back to doing this weekly, and I don't want to take away from that. I don't want to be double uploading on the days that I am doing the list building series. So the roster building is still only going to be 2 or 3 a month, but this series is going to go back to weekly just because I was realizing now that we're back to a normal character release schedule. I'm never going to catch up if I'm only doing 2 of these a month. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fall further away from having done one for every character, which is of course the ultimate goal. So yeah, we're gonna move these back to weekly, and they're gonna shift to the Tuesday slot, and then the Wednesdays I will still have the roster buildings going up every other week basically. But yeah, so. Anyways, with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and start breaking down Mr. Doctor Voodoo here. And yeah, so he is coming in with 2-2-4 defensively. So at first glance, not the most impressive defensive stats in the world. Double twos is rough, but 4 Mystic is quite solid. He's got 6 stamina, is a 4 threat, coming in with a medium move and a size 2. So nothing too special for that part, but of course those defensive stats are really rough on paper. Next, we're going to get into his attack profile here. His first attack is the Mystic Attack Spirit Venom. This is a range 3 5 dice builder attack, so you're going to gain power based on the damage that you deal. And it's got 2 triggers on it here. The first one is the Wild Sap Power. Before damage is dealt, the target character is going to lose 1 power for each wild in your attack roll, and you are going to gain that much power. So yeah, that can be really obnoxious into some targets, being able to take some of their power away. Most of the time, you're expecting to kind of at best kind of go neutral with any damage you deal, so their power won't really change much. But sometimes it can even give you a world where hey, maybe you didn't do any damage, but you took some power away from them, and you still got some yourself, so you're not too upset about not doing damage. So yeah, it can be really good. Then it also has this double hit spiritual strength trigger here. After this attack is resolved, if the target character is size 2 or less, throw it small. And this is an any direction throw, so pretty nice for that as well. Double hit trigger isn't the most consistent thing in the world on 5 dice, but it's also not too bad. I don't remember the math off the top of my head, but it's yeah, it's not bad. And as just kind of an extra thing on a builder that's already kind of doing a fair bit of things, yeah, that's pretty solid. Of course, being a Mystic Attack, being range 3 already kind of gives it a little bit of a leg up over your kind of default builder here. So that's nice to see. The next attack he has here is the Staff of Legba. This is another Mystic Attack. This one's only range 2, so you got to get a little closer for that. It's going to be throwing 7 dice, and it's going to cost you 3 power. But it also has this Wild Power Burn trigger. So before damage is dealt, the target character loses 1 power for each wild in the attack roll, very similar to your sap power there. However, the target character suffers 1 damage for each power lost in this way, and does not gain power for damage suffered as a result of power burn. This can be really good, especially if you're good at rolling wilds. Basically, it's making all of your wilds automatically do a damage to your opponent, assuming they have some power on them, and they're not going to gain power for that damage. And because this happens before damage is dealt, let's say the opposing character's on, let's say, 2 health, and you roll a really good attack, but you have at least 2 wilds in there, you'll actually kill them with the power burn, so then they're never going to actually gain power from taking damage from the attack. So just a kind of cool way you can kind of deny some power, especially as you're taking a character down or something like that. So yeah, really solid attack here, and that doesn't care what their defense dice rolled, so you're able to do damage even through really good defensive stats on that. So yeah, super great attack here, and we can already see kind of a bit of a theme here. He's really taking some of our opponent's power away, not giving them the tools to play with that they necessarily want to have. All right, so his next few abilities are going to be a little messy until we go through all of them because they all have slightly similar things. So we're actually going to start with the Spirit of Brother Daniel thing here. I know normally we would go top to bottom, but in this case we're gonna start with Spirit of Brother Daniel just so everything kind of makes sense. So the first part of this is this character begins the game with a Brother Daniel token. While this character has the token, it adds 2 dice to all of its defense and dodge rolls. So before we go further with that, that brings him up to a 4-4-6 defensively, which is amazing. That is such a good defensive stat line. I don't think there's any character in the game that has a better, total number there than 4-4-6, because I mean that's 14 overall defense there. So yeah, that's a really really solid total. So instantly kind of making this look a lot better. Whenever this character is dazed or another character is dazed or KO'd while it has the Brother Daniel token, so we're going to have some way of passing that out, you move the token back to this character. So cool, he's going to be able to reclaim that, when he wakes up and stuff like that. This character cannot have a Brother Daniel token except the one it begins the game with, so in that match where you're playing him against himself, you can't use it on each other we'll get to what that does in a moment. And then when this character is removed from the battlefield, its Brother Daniel token is removed from the game. So you won't be able to leave that effect on other models when he's removed from the battlefield. So that's its first thing, the Brother Daniel token, and then of course we also have this: whenever this character rolls dice, after the effect is resolved, it gains 1 power if it rolled at least 1 skull. And that suddenly makes the builder even more interesting here, because when you make this builder, you have 3 different ways to gain power. You can gain power for doing damage, of course, as per usual. You've got your sap power, and of course you have this ability here if you roll any skulls. So a great way to really gain some consistency in that power generation. A lot of the times you'll find with Voodoo, he's getting 2 or even 3 power from just one-off attack sort of thing. So yeah, really really solid there. Now we can go into his other abilities here. The first one is Possession. This is an X cost active superpower that says you may spend any number of power to use this superpower. Choose an enemy character within range 3 of this character that has a threat value equal to or lower than the amount of power spent to use this superpower. Move the Brother Daniel token to that character. The enemy character drops all objective tokens it is holding, and while they have the Brother Daniel token, they cannot hold objective tokens. So yeah, this is really, really good. This is an objective drop. It's not one of the ones that takes an action. It's range 3, so you've got good distance on that. Of course, you do have to give out the token to do it, and you do have to pay the threat value of the character. So it's going to be a lot harder to drop objectives off of, say, a Thanos with 2 stones, who's an 8 threat, versus, say, I don't know, Black Widow, who's a 2 threat. Big difference between how much you're able to drop off there. But as we've already established, he's pretty good at gaining power relatively quickly, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue for him to hit those 4 even 5 threats relatively often, and just make them drop their tokens. Now, the other really cool thing about this isn't once per turn or anything like that. So if you've got a bunch of power and you've got multiple targets in range that are all holding objectives, and you can't take them down with your attacks or something like that, in one turn you could theoretically possess, I mean, a lot of a lot of threat worth of characters, if you make some builders in there and stuff like that. But with let's say 9 power, you could hit 3 threats easily and make them drop all of their tokens. If they've already gone, that can be really really good, even if you can't necessarily pick them up yourself or something like that. Huge swings can happen in a single turn from this guy, and of course if you can pick them up, even better. So yeah, just a really, really strong ability. Probably one of the best objective drops in the game still, even after it's been nerfed. Because, I mean, this used to be even better. But yeah, crazy good here. The one downside, of course, being you're giving away that Brother Daniel token, and that makes you a lot more vulnerable. That puts you back to those victim stats at 2/2/4. But we do have a way to get it back with Recall Spirit. This is a 3 cost that says when you're targeted by an attack, you use the superpower to move the Brother Daniel token back to you from anywhere. So yeah, super, super useful to be able to do that. Obviously, if you can't, you're in trouble, but it is going to cost you a good amount of power there. It's going to cost you 3, so you want to be able to, either make sure you're safe when you're using that possession, or make sure you have the power to recall it if you need it. And then lastly, he has flight and immunity to the hex and incinerate conditions. Flight is just useful. I mean, medium move, medium base, so you're already zooming around relatively quickly. Being able to go over buildings and stuff like that is quite nice. And then immunity to hex and incinerate, both of which are really, really annoying conditions. So being able to get around those is also really, really good for him. So yeah, that's just kind of great. Going over to his flip side here, I don't believe anything changes. I think he is the exact same. His art changes, of course, but nothing else. So nothing too much to note there. All right, before we get into affiliations, he also has one tactics card, and this is Seance. This is an unaffiliated active card. It says Doctor Voodoo may play this card. While Voodoo has his brother Daniel token, add 2 additional dice instead of 1 to his attack, defense, and dodge rolls when adding dice for each crit result this round. While another character has his brother Daniel token, that character does not add dice to its attack, defense, or dodge rolls when adding dice for crit results this round. So basically, you can hand out the token to turn off crits for your opponent's models. It's basically a hex at that point, or you can keep it on yourself to make your crits add 2 dice instead of the normal 1. That's not too bad. Personally, I usually find this isn't quite worth the card slot, but if you can combo it with some other things that help you, maybe a leadership or something like that that allows you to have criticals more often, you could potentially get some really cool value out of this. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about affiliations. For affiliations, he's a member of 3 different affiliations, so we'll just go in order here from top to bottom. The first one is Convocation, where of course he can be chosen as a leader, and he's actually a pretty solid choice for a leader. He does put a bit of a target on his back just kind of naturally by being who he is and being able to do all of those objective shenanigans, but he has relatively solid defensive stats, and with a primarily range 3 attack, he doesn't have to be too close to the fight too often, so he's a solid choice for a leader there. He appreciates both sides of the leadership. Obviously, he's making lots of mystic attacks and things like that, and he's able to take advantage of the reactive bump reasonably well, just to again play with those range bands a little bit, whether he wants to move closer so he can get in for his range 2 spender, or if he wants to back up a little bit and try to stay safe, he can play around with both of those. So yeah, he's got some good play there. As far as synergies go, I don't think he's getting too much specifically from any of the models, just kind of off the top of my head. You have some kind of interesting things. I mean, he can be a little power hungry, even with all of his great power generation. So something like Wong to keep him topped up can be nice. Another kind of interesting one is if you are choosing to run the first Doctor Strange in Convocation, usually I know most people prefer the second, but if you are choosing to run the first one, being able to buff his dice even more is definitely something he appreciates, because you can use this ability here to add 2 dice to your defense rolls. So you can go up to effectively a 6-6-8, which is kind of insane. But that's a kind of a very specific synergy. But yeah, so I think there's definitely some solid play for him here. I think he's really good, and of course he does really like the Ironbound Books card as well, which puts him up to 8 Mystic Defense, which is, or no, sorry, still 6 Mystic Defense, but 6 against his other things. I'm mixing up Strange and Ironbound Books now for some reason. But yeah, he really likes that, and I mean, if you are running that, that's kind of absurd. If you're now all of your physical attacks are being made into mystic attacks, and you can go up to 8, kind of insane. And it's not like his energy's slacking either, so he kind of covers that weakness that a lot of the affiliation has of on Iron Man Book's turn, if your opponent can hit energy, not doing as much for you. So yeah, pretty solid place for him. Next, he's also an Avenger, and he does get a fair bit here as well, I think. Yeah, so just starting things out, let's look at Sam here, and yeah, he definitely gets a fair bit out of Sam. Sam already kind of plays a wider, usually slightly more objective focused team, and he plays that game really well. Sam also prefers slightly bulkier characters, and with his great defensive dice, he's not the bulkiest. It's not as good as something like a damage reduction or something like that, but it definitely matters, and being able to remove damage from him is really nice, and give him a little bit of mobility because that's something he doesn't have. So yeah, this is definitely a solid leadership for him to play under. You also do have access to airlift here, which can be really nice for getting him up the board a little bit here and there. Another place that's pretty interesting for him, at least, is Steve Avengers, the first Steve or the second one. We'll talk about both, or I guess the third one. But yeah, this one reduces the cost of the first superpower by 1, which unfortunately doesn't work with your X cost possession here, but does work on Recall Spirit, so still not bad. And because Voodoo is just such a good model and he does so many great things, you have access to Avengers Assemble and stuff here as well, he's still strongly worth considering, even though you're not really getting too much value out of the leadership. And one thing that can be nice is when he does start to get low, you have that bodyguard here to be able to kind of help keep him alive, hopefully. So yeah, there's still some decent synergy there, even if he doesn't get much out of the leadership. Now, speaking of leaderships, though, he does get a lot out of the Steve Three's leadership here, the first Avenger, where you get the ability to, as long as you roll a hit, you can change one of your other dice to any result. And this is fantastic for Voodoo. He loves these wilds. You get one hit, you can guarantee the throw on spiritual strength. Really, really solid. You usually have the power to put into that, and being able to kind of, especially if you're doing it on this one, I pay one power to create a wild, and then I take one of their power, and I'm doing an extra damage. So, boom, I've gained two power for the one that I put into it. Or in Staff of Legba, you can do it with a wild for power burn, and then here you can also just create a hit. So yeah, great things you can do with that leadership. That leadership is really really good. So yeah, obviously lots of great combos there. We're not really going to talk about Hulkbuster leadership. It exists. That is the nicest thing I can say about the leadership. But yeah, I think in general, Voodoo has a really solid place here. They don't actually have a crazy amount of objective drops in Avengers. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's the only one, but he might actually be the only one. I'm probably, oh yeah, Spider-Woman. So he's definitely not the only one. But still, he's probably one of the best ones in the game. So having him affiliated is great, and having him having access to your cards and things like that, specifically in this case, Avengers Assemble is just really really good for him. And last but certainly not least for his affiliations, he is also a Midnight Sun. This is where I started out running him, and yeah, he loves Blade's leadership in my opinion. The bump just allows him to get so much out of those range 3 attacks, and then you can bump into the range 2 if you need to. You can do some really fun things with that, whether that's you're already in range, you double tap, make them drop their objectives and stuff, and then you bump away. Something like that can be really good, really really annoying for your opponent to play around at times. So that's really great for him. You get access to Siege of Darkness, where yeah, you have to spend 2 power to make the attack, but with all of the different ways you can gain power out of that attack, you usually gain more than you spend on it, so that's always good with him as well. Once again, you have that synergy we were talking about with Doctor Strange, and you also have Wong here for a little bit of extra power if you need it. You do have to spend for the bump in the night, so that is something worth considering. Yeah, just really really solid. He is kind of competing for that objective drop slot with Black Cat here. But I think there's a strong argument to at least have both in the 10, and then kind of play game by game for which one is more valuable. And sometimes, honestly, I think the answer is just both. I mean, especially if you're playing on a wider map where you're going to be more spread out, being able to have one of those on both sides of the board is really, really valuable. Or if you're using Black Cat primarily for stagger or something like that, gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So yeah, having a second objective dropper in affiliation is actually still quite handy. And I think very few models actually beat Voodoo when it comes to that role as well. So yeah, he's got a great home here. Looking at other affiliations, honestly, I think Voodoo can be an excellent splash anywhere, especially if you don't already have your own form of objective drop. He is one of the best models in the game for that sort of role. And yeah, he's no slouch outside of that either. He's a reasonably solid Mystic attacker and amazing Mystic defender, with also just good defensive stats across the board. So really good stuff there. He doesn't need a crazy amount. The big things he's looking for are just places that need him. Firstly, and then I guess probably one of the things he would appreciate the most is a little bit of extra power here and there, but he doesn't need too much of it. So obviously we kind of talked about how Steve 1 doesn't actually do that much for him. So you don't care too much for something like that. But I could see him being interesting somewhere like A-Force maybe. Red Skull 1 Cabal could be really, really interesting with him because already gaining so much power off of those builders, so just gaining a little bit more could be really, really fun. Inhumans could be interesting when you're rolling really hot on those builders, being able to kind of funnel some of that power out to some of your other models, versus if you're not getting quite what you need on those, being able to funnel some power into them gives you a little bit of versatility with it. So I think it could be really, really cool there. So something like that could be neat. He also doesn't have any form of dice fixing, so if you can give him that, something like a Wakanda original Black Panther or Invincible Iron Man shield, Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, everyone likes that. Defenders, if you want to play a little bit more aggressive with him, put him into the mix. You can definitely kind of get away with that there. You have models like Luke Cage and Heroes for Hire and stuff like that to kind of keep him alive. So you can definitely play it that sort of game. One of the places I think is at least interesting with him, specifically with his card, is Red Skull 3 Cabal. And the reason why I think this is interesting with his card is because it allows you to turn your skulls into crits. So you have an increased chance of rolling criticals. So while Seance is up, you can use this to basically get a little bit of extra mileage out of it. I don't know if that quite is enough to make Seance a card that you want to bring, every game or anything like that, but I at least think it's really, really interesting. You could also like combine it with Mysterio's Grand Illusion to turn off your bonus crits and maybe do some really interesting things with that. So I think there's some kind of cool things there, but nothing too crazy. I think it's just kind of a neat little fun synergy that I don't think Cabal has too much in the way of objective drops either. So he could be a solid model to fill that role here as well. So yeah, I certainly like the idea of that. I don't know if I would necessarily say it's the most competitive thing, but it's certainly fun. But yeah, I kind of think he's just a good model pretty much anywhere you go. I don't think there's very many places that are actively, not a fan. He doesn't do anything for them and they don't do anything for him. There's definitely a few places where I don't think he's getting as much value out of the leadership or things like that. But I think for the most part, that's not necessarily what he's there for. He's there to do what he's already doing, more so than to benefit from them. Other places that love him like Webs. Yeah, I think they used to run him a lot. I'm not sure if they still do in the top Webs list. But yeah, he's another objective drop because they have plenty of them. But he also gives them a really good Mystic Defender and a Mystic Attacker when they do need to lay the hurt on. So he can be pretty solid there. And yeah, again, I'm not sure if he's still being run there, but I know he used to be. And if I understand correctly, he was quite good there when he was. It's just now that they've gotten a lot of models that are really good there as well. So yeah, of course Emma, he's gonna be great there. Most models are, but yeah, so he's got a lot going on, and I think he can honestly slot into pretty much everything. I'm not really seeing anything that I'd even like actively want to avoid with him because he's just kind of generically good. So I think that is going to do it for Doctor Voodoo here, Mr. Jericho Drum. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're looking at probably the best objective dropper in the game. I think at least in my opinion. If you feel differently, please do let me know. I'm curious to hear who you guys think is better for that role. But yeah, we've got a solid kind of mystic attacker that does a lot of kind of annoying power denial abilities here, and can lay out some pretty good damage with the Staff of Legba attack. He's got that objective drop, which is fantastic. He's got really, really solid defensive stats. Nothing too crazy, no damage reductions or anything in there, but just really, really solid dice and immunity to the conditions that are kind of turn that off. So really, really solid stuff there. He's great at generating power, so he's not going to be too power starved too often, but being able to give him one or two here and there can be quite nice. Yeah, we've just got a really self-sufficient model here with Voodoo, and yeah, there's not much more to say than that. He does a lot of things. He does a lot of things really, really well, and there's not very many things he's bad at. I mean, he's not the fastest model. He doesn't have any action compression. So again, if you can help him out with that sort of thing, definitely look for synergies with models or leaderships that can do that. But yeah, he kind of does his thing, and he's pretty consistent at doing it. So he's just a really good model. I don't have much more than that, but let me know what you guys think on Dr. Voodoo here down below. Curious to hear what you guys think, where you guys have seen success with him, where you think he might be really good, synergies, that sort of thing. Definitely curious to hear your guys' thoughts. But that is going to do it for my thoughts for this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do discussion-focused content like this on the weekdays, and we got battle reports on the weekends. So if you're a fan of any of that stuff, feel free to jump on in. But that's going to do it for me, so until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.